Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this Wednesday. Yes, it's the shortened week. Well, yes, we're already at hump day. It's Wednesday. Wow, what a first day we had of the week on Tuesday. Just looking back to yesterday, we were down significantly. The accelerated move from the start of the day until the final 2 hours of the day was absolutely stunning to watch, and down about 700 points on the lows for the Dow. And we had a similar sort of a path, although there was much more positive early on, at least for the NASDAQ. Early on, NASDAQ not looking so bad, then started to accelerate to the downside as well. It was in that final 2 hours that both hit the lows of the session and then had a gradual kind of a recovery, if you want to call it. We still finished down 482 points on the industrials, the Dow itself, almost a 1.5% move to the downside, about a 1.25% move to the downside for the NASDAQ, which was down about 160. And that's after a recovery being down over 300 points. So both major indices just giving us those indicators that we are still in a very volatile market. As a matter of fact, yesterday, the volatility index was in a range, call it from 28 to 32. We did finish back off of that 20 underneath 29, about 28.80 yesterday for the volatility index on some nice volume, about 41 million contracts trading on the option side of things. So 10-year just kind of seems to be planted again, sort of found itself once again, call it between 193 and 197 yesterday, right around that 194 area. All the major sectors that we were watching yesterday very closely were getting hit to the downside. You know, every once in a while, you've got something that really stands out that's pulling against that. It really wasn't the case yesterday. Seemed as if everything was getting pushed to the downside. Consumer discretion, by far the worst. That was down about 3% yesterday. Financials, not terrible, down less than 0.5%. But then you look over at energy, you look at over at the materials, you look at semiconductors, all of those getting hit to the downside. Technology was down nearly 1% as well. Obviously, you could see a lot of that in a reflection of what was going on with the NASDAQ. So there was some good yesterday. Medtronic up about 3% yesterday, having a pretty good day. We've talked about Kraft Heinz on multiple occasions, having a pretty good day. That was up about 5%. Ralph Lauren up about 2.5% or so yesterday. McDonald's, a lot of conversation yesterday. Carl Icahn and all this other stuff about trying to be a little bit friendlier, hopefully, to the animals. And that stock actually to the upside. But there was a heck of a lot of weakness as well off of earnings, some of that for sure. Look at Home Depot. Home Depot was off 9% yesterday. Now, that's a pretty good shot to the downside. It's gotten hit before on earnings. And oftentimes, regardless of the earnings, we've seen the stock itself actually kind of pull back, whether they were good earnings or bad earnings, almost like financials at times, where you could have some great earnings and yet they're still going to sell. Well, we saw a little bit of that yesterday with Home Depot. Best Buy under fire as well. That was down about 7%. Boeing down about 5%. You get the idea that there was some pretty healthy moves to the downside, some hits that were pretty harsh. As a matter of fact, casinos, another area where we'd seen a lot of the market getting hit. But that barometer again, Tesla, down 4%. Markets definitely getting pulled to the downside. We're going to talk about Tesla one more time in just a second, but Chinese names also getting hit. And then you look at the mega cap names, all getting pulled, not dramatically, but getting hit to the downside. And that, of course, is going to move markets as well. When I'm talking about Apple and Amazon and Google and Facebook, all across that board, you know what I'm talking about, those mega cap names. When they start to go down even 0.5% and 1%, that starts to add up a little bit as well. So this morning, we come in very calm. Things feel pretty good. Matter of fact, Dow's up a couple of hundred points. You look over at the NASDAQ, that's up about 150 points early on. Held on at the opening, gave back a little bit early on for the Dow, but then the Dow was right back up there over 200. About 45 minutes into the session, we started to see a pretty good sell-off going on. Then we were down into negative territory for both the Dow and the NASDAQ. And as a matter of fact, the last I looked, and things are changing quickly, guys, we all know that, we were down about 110 on the Dow and down about 55 on the NASDAQ. So certainly seeing some movement right away. And as I say, if that was just the move of the day, wouldn't be that big a deal. But based upon the fact that we were up 200, now down over 100 points on the Dow itself, and the NASDAQ up about 150 points, then down about 50 or 60 points, gives you a little bit of an idea of this intraday that I keep bringing up all the time for volatility. It's why oftentimes that people say, Well, the VIX doesn't really show us anything. It doesn't really give us the real numbers and everything, which is absolute crazy, number one. But number two, it's also a measure of everything that is going on. So we're seeing that going on within the S&P 500 as well. Crude was down around 91, 92. Last I looked, it was right back up there above 93. And a lot of folks talking about what we'd seen in Brent yesterday, kind of nibbling all the way up near that 100 mark. I would expect to see crude still. I've been talking about this for many, many months. By the paper that we're seeing, including today, a little bit of paper in some of these beta names as well. When I see that, it tells me that there's still an appetite for more to the upside, which would mean we're probably going to see crude continue this move to the upside as well. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. It's already played out magnificently well with those options being a great indicator for the better part of 14, 16, 17 months or so. So we'll keep tracking that as well and giving you guys all the information. Bitcoin, about 39,000. It was starting to pull back a little bit. I look over at the 10-year at a 197, not a real big deal. Volatility index was starting to creep up right before I got on here. Just above 29. Is it going to push towards 30 again? Certainly it could. Yesterday we were up at 32. See no reason at all why today we wouldn't see a little bit more volatility if we continue to see this sort of sharp move to the downside and there's some continuation of that. We're going to see that volatility index start to pop back up and through 30, I would think. So early on, take a look over at all these various sectors and some of the changes. Early on, when things were very positive, energy was up about 1%. It was still hanging on early on. Communication services were up about 1%. That went negative. Financials were up nearly 1%. That went negative. Materials were also up. That got back close to flat. They were up about 0.75%. Technology was up nearly 1%. That went back to flat, although I did see it starting to recover a little bit. We'll see. Semiconductors were up very, very nicely, nearly a 2% move to the upside, but they did pull back, but they were still strong in positive territory before I came on. So we've got a couple of things that I've got to just show to you in terms of what's strong, what's weak today. So what is weak? TJX, that's pretty weak. That was down about 5% or more. I looked over at Ross Stores down about 4%. I also look over, Moderna was under some pressure. And yes, that barometer of Tesla started off kind of flat. Very rapidly was one of those first movers starting to move to the downside. Before I know it, it was about down 2%. Then it was down about 2.25% right before we came on here. Some of that mega cap tech, which was strong, was starting to weaken a little bit. We look at the semiconductors. They started off strong, as we talked about, and they were starting to get a little bit weaker than they once were when we started off the day, the first 15 minutes or so. Then I look over at Nike. That was in positive territory. Some of the casinos were in positive territory. We had a nice jump early on out of Caesars and Lowe's. Matter of fact, Lowe's off of their earnings, following up with Home Depot. So a lot going on, and we'll see if this continues to be another one of those days like we've had so many of so far in 2022. So we got two unusuals for you, and then we're out of here. So number one, Overstock. This one's pretty interesting. Haven't seen this name in a while. It was trading right around $49.30 or so. 6,500 of this Friday, the 25th, 50 strike calls. So they're buying basically right there where the stock is, the 50s. They're buying those calls, 6,500 of those, and paying about $2 up to a little bit more than $3. So there is some healthy premiums built into this for something that's going to be expiring on Friday. And obviously, today's already Wednesday. Going to have to pan out very, very rapidly in this move to the upside. Secondly, I've got Facebook. Now, what makes this so interesting is a lot of people giving up on Facebook. They've got this pressure that's been going on. We've all watched that. Mark Zuckerberg today is going to be giving a little bit of an update on what's going on with the metaverse, which I should call Facebook metaverse, but I'm still stuck in the old school of Facebook. But he's going to be talking about metaverse today around noon Eastern time. So that ought to be interesting. We'll see what all comes out of that. 6,000 of Friday's expiring, February 25th, the 205 calls. Where was the stock? A little bit more than 205, about 205.74. Paid $3 up to a little bit more than $4 for those options. We'll see if those can pan out. And obviously, what kind of a catalyst could it be today in terms of the updates from Zuckerberg himself on Facebook? Folks, have a great day of trading. I know it's volatile. I know it's not easy, but as long as you can stay disciplined, you have control over risk and reward. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, you got to understand the options world, the derivatives world. It continues to be absolutely on fire. And as I mentioned, 41 million contracts trading. These numbers are huge, guys. Volatility is there, volume is there, and of course, talked about right out of the gate, the velocity is there as well. Folks, have a great day of trading.